Well, today we have a very special guest on the show. We will call him our money guru, if you will, Managing Director of DLG Wealth Management, Andy Guzzetti. We want to thank you so much for joining our morning show today.
Great being here, Stephanie.
Absolutely. Well, when it comes to talking about money, you know, there's so many different topics and so many questions that a lot of our viewers have. But the one thing that we are focusing on today is protecting your downside. And, you know, what that means is that so many times we're focused on how to grow our assets, not necessarily protecting what we already have.
That's a good point. Many of the investors I'm talking to today are really concerned about protecting the downside. I mean, I heard terms that I never heard before, terms like tail risk, black swan events. Matter of fact, let me show you what a tail risk is because it's very important. Tail risk, if you remember your statistics, this is a bell-shaped curve, and if you do statistics, usually 95% of happenings happen within this bell-shaped curve. And most money managers, most investors are prepared for these type of things happening. But down here is tail risk. When the event happens down here and this tail, the left tail, that's when the meltdowns happens, the 2008 meltdown, the housing crisis, the long-term capital crisis, all the things that have happened. That's tail risk. And our investors are very concerned about protecting their downside with tail risk or black swan events, which, remember, everybody thought there were only white swans, but when you have a black swan, that's a tail risk event. So we talk 75% of the time on downside protection versus 25% on upside gains.
Now, Andy, is this a new focus that wealth managers like yourself are kind of shifting to because of the events of like 2008?
Absolutely. I mean, because of 2008, folks cannot take the 45% meltdown in their portfolios. Also, people are getting older, and instead of growing their assets, they want to protect their assets, whether it's protecting just assets or protecting their income. So they want to talk about how can I do that? And, you know, we show them some ways of doing it. There's a few ways. Not everything is perfect, but we try to get them protected on the downside.
And one of the things that you just said, people that are older, they need to be focused on what they have and protecting that, not necessarily growing it anymore.
Sure. One of the biggest things in portfolios that we've learned is, or we had forgotten when we were doing asset allocation, is cash is an asset class. And a lot of people forgot that, but that's one way of protecting your downside. Make sure you have some in cash to protect that downside when doing asset allocation. Now, there's other ways too. We do a lot of work in managed futures programs because these programs have done very well in times like 2008 and 1999 in the tech bubble crisis. So we use a lot of managed futures to protect some of the downside. Also, we work with variable annuities. Those are especially variable annuities that have protection of income as well as protection of principal. These are all things you can do when you work with an advisor just to get yourself looking at to protect the downside. Very important.
Absolutely. And as you just said, cash, of course, is king, as always.
Well, it may not, it depends on what you're looking at, but it's good for you, that's for sure.
Absolutely. All right, Andy, well, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
You.
And next week, we will be focusing on Social Security.